NPCs can always be dumb, but sometimes they can be pretty charming in their stupidity and amusing additions to games. But what about when they gotta help you out? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 AI partners we just did not like. Starting off with a little bit of a disclaimer here, there are some obvious examples like Slippy from Star Fox, Fee from Skyward Sword, Lydia from Skyrim. We already mentioned all these on our 10 most annoying sidekicks of all time list, so if you want to hear us take a dump on them, hit that. Without further ado, starting at number 10, Resident Evil 4's Ashley Graham. Let's start this list off right. This is a totally infamous example. The AI partner from Resident Evil 4. Big chunks of the game are dedicated to protecting this girl from swarms of Ganados who want to kidnap her. And what can she do? Well, basically friggin' nothing. She just stands around uselessly, gets in your way, and generally is just a nuisance. Anyone who's played Resident Evil 4 will have Ashley's shrill scream of "Leon, help!" burned into their brain. The main reason she's not on the top of this list is that she's honestly not the worst. Like, she'll duck if you aim your gun at her, and she can hide in these dumpsters on command while you deal with all the enemies trying to kill you. And because the enemies want to kidnap her rather than kill her, they just grab her and slowly start walking away rather than slash at her till her tiny health bar disappears. So, that's good. Still, there is no denying that she can be really annoying a lot of the time. Most of her dialogue in the game is either complaining, crying, or, well, an unholy union between the two. But interestingly enough, while there are tons of people who hate having escort Ashley around Resident Evil 4, myself included, there are a ton of people out there that don't mind her, hell, even like her. To say this part of the game is divisive is a huge understatement. Personally, while like I said, I don't like her, I don't know that she is as bad as some people say, as evidenced by her being number 10 rather than number 1, but I can't blame anyone for disliking what is essentially one big escort quest. At number 9 is Fallout 4's Preston Garvey. One of the first companions you meet in the game is this dude Preston Garvey. Honestly, as a character, he's not that bad. He's kind of bland, he's not really offensive or anything though. As an ally, he wouldn't even really be worth putting on this list. But you all know we are not talking about allies. You know what we're talking about. Another settlement needs our help! The memes. Good God, the memes. If you don't know or don't remember what we're talking about here, let's break it down. Basically, Preston Garvey is your main contact for the Minutemen, one of the factions in the game. Their main goal is to defend the various settlements out in the game world, which sounds like a nice enough goal until you realize it's less them defending settlements and really just you defending settlements. That's where the annoyance comes in. He just calls you so often, like way too often, about settlements that need help. They're on a time limit, and if you don't respond fast enough, that settlement will take damage and you'll fail the quest. So you pretty much have to stop whatever thing you're doing, rush to whatever settlement he's calling about, shoot a few mutants, then go back to the thing you were doing before. Like, it's never really fun to get interrupted, especially when you're halfway through some ruin or something, but if you don't respond, it's likely that a settlement without much defense will take damage.
Of course, you can just ignore all that, but you'll get these constant annoying messages about a settlement needing help anyways. Even if you say no to Garvey and don't become the general of the Minutemen, he still calls you about settlements that need help. Like, there's no escaping.
And number 8 is the Handler from Monster Hunter World. Here's another support style character that people didn't like for various reasons, mostly in the kind of way that she interrupts the game. Like, anytime you have to do a mission where you have to babysit her while she slowly walks around, it's not fun. This is a game that is about fighting giant monsters, not slow walk and talks about basically nothing. So whenever a handler mission comes up, most players get pretty annoyed. I'm not gonna get into her personality here. Some people hate her enthusiastic but bumbling character. Some people like it, but there's no denying she spends a lot of the game blundering to certain death, and the only way she survives is because your hunter bails her out. It's meant to be played for comedy, but some of these fights are no joke, and her antics get real annoying real fast as you're struggling to get through some of these sections. And number 7 is Micah Bell from Red Dead Redemption 2. Alright, so Micah's not exactly a partner. He's a member of the Dutch Vanderlyn gang, which means he pops up from time to time, and you sometimes do a mission with him, but he's not a constant presence with you or anything. And his AI isn't exactly the worst or even notable in comparison to anyone else in the game. but he's just such a despicable character that he deserves a mention on this list. For a character meant to be an ally, he is basically a huge liability and pain in the ass from the very beginning. One of the first things that happens in the game is you find him trying to harass a woman whose husband was just murdered. He's a piece of crap right from the start, right there. But because he's a member of the gang, Arthur is begrudgingly loyal to him. It doesn't get much better after that either. The first mission where you work with him involves busting him out of jail for a double murder. Then he shoots up an entire town and murders a man and his wife in cold blood. Rockstar games tend to have you work with nasty and unlikable characters, but Mike is definitely one of the worst. Made all the more frustrating because he's so obviously sucking up to Dutch and making excuses by shifting the blame onto other members of the gang. Yeah, I mean, you eventually wish someone would just shoot him. He eventually becomes the main antagonist of the game, but that is only after having to endure him as an ally for most of the story. And number 6 is Rain from Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. It's another love it or hate it entry on the list. Rain, one of the first party members in Xenoblade Chronicles, is a brawny and upbeat dude who is pretty supportive of the main character, Shulk. Basically, he's the anime best friend archetype, and he plays the part well. So, what makes him a candidate for this list?
Now it's Rain time!
That's it. One single phrase which is seared in the memories of anyone who's played this game. Anytime you get into battle, which is constantly, it's a JRPG, there's a chance he will say that line. I don't know the actual odds, but if somebody told me it's 95%, I'd believe them. He says,
now it's Rain time!
Constantly. And this is a 60-hour game minimum, so if you got him in the party, which is likely, because he's one of the first characters you get, and he's a pretty solid tank character, if that's the case, you're gonna hear it a lot. A whole hell of a lot. Honestly, any of the AI party members in these games can be annoying just because of how much they talk. It's like non-stop blathering when you're in battle. You start a battle, every character has a line, and if the battles are hard or easy, they have a line. If they perform an action, they have a line. When you win the fight, they say something, with more random stuff said in between. They talk so much, but the amount of lines that they have is fairly limited, so you're going to be hearing a lot of repeats. It's just that
it's Rain time
stands out so much because it's said so emphatically, and it's just a weird thing to say. After a while, some players might develop a kind of Stockholm syndrome with it and actually enjoy the nonstop barking of
now it's Rain time.
But for us, it's a need to mute the game after a while thing. And number 5 is Natalia from Goldeneye 64. Goldeneye on the Nintendo 64 is a beloved game that many people remember as or consider it to be the first actually good FPS on a console. Does that mean it does not have its faults and frustrations? Absolutely not. It is definitely problem-laden at times in the experience, and probably the worst is the amount of escort missions. Almost all of them revolve around Natalia, by the way. The amount of missions where she tags along and you have to keep her from dying are almost hard to count. There are a lot of them, and on harder difficulties, they are universally a huge pain. Bunker 2, where you have to escape with her, is annoying, and at the train level where you have to shoot the right dude or Natalia gets shot, it's confusing. But the worst part with her has to be the mission control. That's the one where she has to reprogram the Goldeneye satellite, which amounts to standing in the middle of this giant room with multiple floors, connected by this awkward, twisting staircase things, where enemies swarm in from every direction, and they can kill her before you even realize what's happening. If she dies, you fail, and with the game being 1997, there's no checkpoints. You're gonna have to restart the whole mission from the beginning if she dies, and it's gonna happen, because it's not super easy, like I said. Good luck memorizing where the enemies spawn from too, because that's just about the only way to get through that part. This character is basically the perfect example of like crappy escort missions, and she doesn't take too many hits. She does nothing to defend herself and stands in pretty much the worst possible place while enemies attack from multiple directions. It's one of those things where you just have to die a few times in order to stand a chance, and it's just not fun. And number 4 is the adoring fan from the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. There's not a lot to say about this guy. Look at him. His name, his troll doll-like appearance, he just sucks. If you manage to become the grand champion of the arena, then this dude is your dubious reward. He's a groveling little chump that stands outside the arena and will follow you around if you let him, meaning that he is a companion. An absolutely terrible companion. All of his lines are just him sucking up to you. Like, he has no personality beyond it. He's just a total bootlicker.
He's got no redeeming qualities whatsoever. He's so ridiculously lame that players have discovered many amusing ways to kill him. Like the fact that, at least according to the Elder Scrolls wiki, he'll always take the shortest way back to the arena if you tell him to go. Meaning that if you're at the top of a cliff, he'll just jump to his death in order to go back. So yeah, he's meant to be a joke, and he's intentionally annoying, but that doesn't make him less annoying just because the developers wanted him to be that way. I mean, it does make it kind of funny, but that doesn't mean he's not absolutely terrible. And worst of all, you can't even permanently kill him. No matter what you do, 3 days later, he will rise again. At number 3, anytime you let an AI drive in a Halo game, holy crap. In the original Halo, your AI soldier buddies they'd only ride shotgun, which is good because they'd never drive. It was definitely for the best because from Halo 2 onward, it became possible to give the AI a chance behind the wheel, and the results were not pretty. Allied AI in Halo games was never the best, especially in comparison to how good the enemy AI is, but it's most noticeable when you give them control of a car like the Warthog. Like, they could not drive a car in a straight line if their lives depended on them. It doesn't matter when, doesn't matter where, you put them in a car, and they're gonna find a wall to run into. Like, even the simplest turns would confound these obvious driver's ed failures. I am just talking about, like, even the basic fact of getting from point A to point B. Throw some enemies in the mix, it gets way worse. Thing is, it doesn't feel like the driving AI got any better between Halo 2, Halo Reach, and even Halo 4. Like, these guys just don't know what they're doing. When they're not driving into walls, they're stopping in front of rocket launches or driving painfully slowly around swarms of enemies. They do as little as possible to preserve their own lives. Sometimes you just want to jump in a turret and let someone else do the driving for you, but in this series, that is not a good idea. At number 2 is Rodney from Animal Crossing New Horizons. There is no other villager in Animal Crossing New Horizons more hated than Rodney. Want to know how disliked this weird-looking little gerbil guy is? There's an entire subreddit dedicated to hating him called Fuck Rodney. Yet the hate is real for this one. How Animal Crossing works is that there are a ton of potential villagers for your island, 397 in fact, if the Animal Crossing wiki is to be believed, but you can only accept 10 total before your village gets filled up. That means certain villagers that people don't like, either for being ugly or having a bad attitude, can take up a slot that a more appealing villager cannot. And if you get someone you don't like, that can generate a lot of anger. Out of all the less popular villagers, Rodney has come out as the one that people dislike the absolute most. He's real goofy looking, but he's got this really smug personality type, so he's full of himself and condescending when you talk to him, and his house is kind of a dump. And yeah, that's really it. He's just a smug, stupid looking guy that people just don't want around. At this point, his status is probably more of a meme than anything else, but I mean, look at him. For what's just a bunch of pixels on a screen, he does ooze unearned self-confidence. Just looks like a guy you automatically don't want to like, at least in terms of Animal Crossing people. So he's, yeah, not evil or frustrating or anything. He's just a smug hamster who can be unpleasant to be around. He's the annoying friend that you don't know why you put up with. He's relatably bad in a way that strikes a chord with a lot of people, and honestly, that's why we put him near the top of this list. And at number 1 is Daikatana, Superfly Johnson, and Makiko. There is so much wrong with Daikatana. John Romero's solo act after leaving id, the creators of Doom. The levels are just confusing slogs, the guns, especially the first part, are terrible, enemies are incredibly annoying, the list just goes on and on and on. But there's one part in the game that is unquestionably the worst part of the whole thing. It's so bad, it's so baffling, I don't know how it happened. It's the AI partners. At a certain point in the game, you recruit 2 of them, the ludicrous Makiko, a dragon lady stereotype, and Superfly Johnson. For basically the rest of the game, you are stuck with these chumps who quote-unquote help you in basically the worst possible way. They're supposedly around to kill enemies with you, but they barely do any of that. And even worse, if they die, it's game over. Yeah, these 2 turds basically turn into an escort mission for the rest of the game. Nearly the entire game, you just have to deal with this dead weight, and it turns an already bad game into one that is nearly unplayable. You can make things easier for yourself by just ordering the 2 of them to stay at the start of every level, but it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because either you drag these losers with you and hope they don't die, or they have to sit at the start of the level, and you have to go through the entire stage clearing out enemies, walk all the way back to the start, and then have them follow you back to the end. And even that it's still incredibly frustrating. The AI pathing is terrible, so you have to slowly creep through the level if you want them not to get stuck running into a wall. You carefully have to try to guide them to the exit, and even still, they get stuck.
sometimes in a way that forces you to restart. Anytime you have to get them up a ladder, that is the worst thing because they get caught on each other, and sometimes they even just refuse to climb. There's a reason the most popular mod for this game is the one that just removes the AI companions completely. It's still not a good game, but at least you don't have to deal with probably the worst AI partners in any video game ever. But what do you think? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first, of course, is a subscription, so click subscribe. Do not forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter, Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.